Welcome back. A new report claims that the U.S. government is collecting DNA samples from migrant children and teenagers. According to Wired, they're reportedly uploading that data into a national criminal database used by local, state, and federal law. The idea is to be able to find them if they ever commit a crime. Now, the information reportedly comes from records reported by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection earlier this year.
So we're going to bring in Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes. Now, while this report is new, the data collection is not. This started back in 2020, and so these records are up until 2024. It's kind of giving Minority Report from that movie with Tom Cruise, where it's to talk about future crimes. But is this even legal?
It's giving. I love that. Let's stay right there. It's definitely giving some sketchy questions. I mean, I take it back to when I was a law student, take it back to when I was a law professor. This is very problematic when you're talking about anticipatory crimes. Like, I want to be able to get your information because in the future you may do something. In this report, I read them talk about a number of things where we wanted to look back. We want to check your fingerprints. We want to check your DNA to see if you've committed some past crime. And I think you can make an argument for that. And wherever you're at on the political spectrum, you can agree with trying to figure out how to prevent or find and solve cases that maybe this DNA will help you solve. But finding future and preventing future ones, even for adults, I think that's problematic. But for children, I think we've tapped into a really unknown kind of weird space where I don't even know how you go back from this because now this database is there. And so what do you do with this information? I mean, we know that data is the new gold. So someone wants to get their hands on this data, someone maybe being any law enforcement agency that can connect with it. But I'm not sure of the legality of it. I mean, the first thing is getting your DNA is a search. So we have something called the Fourth Amendment. That's the first thing you'd have to jump over. Well, is a DNA swab, is a hair, any of those type of things, is it a search under the Fourth Amendment? I don't think the founders of our Constitution intended DNA swabs because they didn't know what that was. But courts have said that a DNA swab is a Fourth Amendment concern. It's something that's protected. So then the second question is, do immigrants, do people that are migrating to this country have the same Fourth Amendment protections? The answer the courts have said in the past is yes, they do. They have the same protections except for a few things. Within this weird little zone, it's called a reasonable grounds, a reasonable zone close to any border coming into the country, where the government considers that a 100-mile radius. The standards are a little bit lower for folks that are coming in there. Still have due process, still have access to constitutional rights, but that's where they're able to do this. And I think the legality of it is how they're doing it. It's within that 100-mile radius. That's the only way I can see it happening. This happened in the middle of the state, somewhere like Michigan, somewhere like Iowa. Yeah, probably not constitutional. But if they're capturing people as they come in, I think that this would probably be allowed really, really close to that borderline sketchy area. But I think the courts would say this is something that's within their scope.
Khalif, with their policy, they say that you can go as young as children as 14, right? But it's their own policy. So when you see from that report there are children as young as 4, but when you're talking about legality, if you're going against your own policy, is that necessarily against the law, or is it just kind of frowned upon, that gray area?
Yeah, that policy is created because you're trying to not break these barriers. They typically say that the DNA swab for the people that are 14, you mentioned that because they're typically only doing DNA swabs for folks who are getting fingerprints wet.
Right.
So if your internal policy says, I'm only getting fingerprints for 14 and up, why wouldn't DNA swab a person? But I think what happens is when you're in this situation is you're trying to capture and gather as much information as you can. They're like, look, we're not going to make a subset of, okay, we're grabbing these people, we're not grabbing these folks. They're just doing everybody. And I think it creates a culture of fear and of like, I just want to get as much information as I can. Not saying that they can or can't. I definitely don't think it makes it illegal because their internal policy does it. Typically, that would be a civil matter. If I point to your internal policy and you failed to follow it, then I can sue you because you failed to follow your processes. But criminality-wise or constitutional-wise, I think it's still constitutional. It's just probably something that we shouldn't be doing.
Whether it's border protection, whether it's FBI, they use CODIS, the national database. How do you deal with accountability, transparency, to make sure that those agencies are using DNA and using these so that it's not genetic surveillance?
Back to the Minority Report. These are the types of things that the folks on the other side that are frustrated that this is happening is saying that you're only capturing this thing so that you can survey me in the future. And I don't know how you get around that. I don't even know how you get around the transparency part because I don't think folks are opening up the door to say, yeah, I'll show you the total number of the folks that we got that were in the 4-year-old bracket, that were in the 5-year-old bracket. So and then also, who's advocating for those folks? Like, yeah, you may have ACLU, you may have these advocacy groups that try to file lawsuits, but as an individual, if you're there, if you're a 4-year-old or you're coming in with your child, you don't know the rules of this country, so you wouldn't even know, like, hey, are you guys even supposed to be doing that? First of all, you're just trying to get in here and make sure you can be safe. those are the types of things when you're talking about like these victimless crimes or victimless offenses or people that just don't understand the law. And as Sotomayor said the other day in Justice Jackson, we're getting to the point where now, like, everyone has to sue for their own protections, not like having these, nationwide protections. This has put us in that same situation where these folks that are coming here don't recognize that you have some law, that you have some protection, that you have something that should stop them, due process, reasonable suspicion, something that should allow you to even get access to my DNA. So what did the 4-year-old do that made you get access to their DNA? Those are the questions that should be being asked, but they're not. So I think we're going down a really slippery slope, and this is problematic. And I can understand the law enforcement benefit. As a person that primarily does DNA homicide cases, I see how DNA helps. I see how they can prove a case by, hey, they swapped the bullet casing. Your client's fingerprints were all over it. We X, Y, and Z. This was there. Like, you can see that DNA connects a lot of cases. So I understand the helping portion. But I don't know with the forward-looking portion specifically if that's what it was intended to say, that we can allow these folks to be targeted.
Our Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes breaking that down for us. Khalif, thank you.